All right. Last week we got into some things, and I took the liberty of including everything that I taught you last week on the front page of your notes. When we're ready, not right now, but we'll flip the page and we'll go over the second part of this, but we'll recap some things. The basic bottom line is, what's 2013 going to cost you? And do you even have any idea of what 2013 will cost you? How you doing, Robert? There is a cost or a price for this year if you want this year to be anything different than anything you've ever lived. Now, here's what we're going to deal with and get into tonight. The greatest element missing in the mindset of the average goal setter, the greatest element, is the issue of pulse. What you have your pulse on. I made reference to this last week. Some of you looked at me kind of foggy, so I'll make a little bit better reference of it tonight. But one of the, I guess, other than a lack of faith, when you read the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you read the actual, what's highlighted as the actual words of Jesus, his biggest gripe when he walked the earth, other than a blatant lack of faith, was that the people he taught were primarily clueless. They had no pulse on the times they were in. They had no pulse on, he said at times, you don't even know who's walking amongst you. Then at other times he would say things like, you knew not your day of visitation. You knew not the hour. And he would go into explaining to people at different isolated occasions, do you even have any idea? The greatest element to a goal setter is the pulse. We live in the Silicon Valley out here, and the only one of the greatest things that thrives is not the competitiveness of who can make a better tablet or who can make a smarter phone. The issue is who is better at the pulse. The pulse of what America's buying, the pulse of where technology is heading, the pulse. You got one of the co-founders of Google over in North Korea. For what? One of the most impoverished nations in the entire world. They can't afford $500 iPhones or $200 software. It's like, what is it over there? It's about how do we stay ahead of the pulse. Facebook this week has a coming out of their quote-unquote graphing technology. And the reality is it's a press conference. Also, Mark Zuckerberg can get up and say, this is not really going to be that doable for quite a long time. But we wanted to tell you about it, and more importantly, we wanted to tell you we did it first. What has he got? He's describing to you his pulse on that end of a new frontier of technology. The greatest element you have is your pulse. And I'm going to get into explaining more about this tonight. We'll recap some things from last week because I put them on your notes. I have my pulse, and I am a very technologically illiterate, ignorant person. This is my replacement phone. And I had the opportunity to get a high-end touchscreen phone. This is what I chose. Because touchscreen phones mess up my pulse. I only need to talk and hang up.
Yes.
Send an occasional text, and doing this and talking like this, can't hang. I nearly had 3 wrecks the other day with that thing. I took it right back to the store. Said, you got to give me. They're like, well, this is only 3G, and this is. I said, this is bliss. And it's like you could bomb this thing. Look at the rubber packaging around this. This is a construction industrial strength flip phone. Why? It's the only thing they really have. Flip phones aren't the rage, like they used to be. They don't make the cool, real thin razor phones. I used to have one. Point being is, let me jump ahead of the game and give you a better scenario. The only time I ever was able to talk to John Maxwell, renowned leadership teacher, phenomenal. I asked him, he had made the statement in a mass meeting that I was helping coordinate in Minneapolis. He had made the statement that at that point in his life, he was getting like 5,000 invitations a year to speak. Now, you expect when you ask a preacher, how do you, process of elimination, consider 5,000 invitations? You expect the answer to be real spiritual. I pray 23 out of 24 hours a day and go where God tells me. No. I got to ask him privately. I said, how in the world do you juggle 5,000 invitations and you know who to say yes to or no to? And what he described to me was he has a pulse on the top 5 questions he asks himself internally and his staff ask of every invitation. So by the time those 5,000 invitations are kicked down to him, there may be half that or less. And then he scrolls through them and he says, can I do this there, this there, this there? And the top 5 questions are all based on what his purpose is. He wants to empower leaders, talk to leaders. He wants no handcuffs on him about what kind of leaders. He wants leaders of multi-denominations. He goes all this stuff. He has a pulse. So therefore, he can look at the wrong invitation and immediately tell you, that's the wrong invitation. There's no way I'd say yes to that. I don't care how much of the moon they're offering me. I can't do this, 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 and this there. Why would I even go there? Does that make sense to you? I want to talk to you tonight about pulse and how to find it. How many are trying to get out of credit card debt this year? How many are trying to get to do some things that are going to directly involve a greater influx of finances? How would you know whether you're close or you're far? Where is that information that every month, matter of fact, every day, you keep right in front of your face? Tell me the scripture that you get inundated with when you go get the new church member presentation at the average church. Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision plain, that those that read it may run with it. Well, first of all, has nothing to do with vision, the actual scripture. Preachers should be arrested and fined, a heavy fine, and given to charity for their misuse of the scripture. But the point is the paradox is still the same. Write the vision, make it clear, accessible, relatable, so that those that read it, who's reading your vision? Well, chances are only you. What's the purpose of being able to read it? So you can run with it. You know how many people I meet in life leave their phone in the car? You try to get a hold of them. You had a golden opportunity for, oh, yeah, my phone was in the car. I didn't know you called. They don't check their emails. Oh, I see you emailed me 2 weeks ago. You wanted to give me $1 billion, but yeah, I'm sorry. I guess you gave it to someone else. I don't check my emails very much. Just go. No pulse. No pulse on anything. Let me just show you something that's as corny as anything you're going to see. And I'm not going to let you read it. I brought this. You say, well, then why are you showing us if we can't read it? This is a week outdated version. I update it every day. Those 3 pieces of paper, with all that text, I can rule the world with this, and every goal I have to be an absolute billionaire is ruled from those 3 pieces of paper. I know where my entire life is, and I am never caught off guard because of what's in these 3 pieces of paper. I know how close I am to my financial goals, my cause goals, my family goals. I know what this is going to cost. I know how many points I have if I've got to get a last-minute airline ticket and hop on an airplane, and how many. Pulse on information. The average person you'll run into, it's in their garage, it's in their car, it's in their somewhere in a box in their garage. They don't have their fingertips on anything. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Set goals all you want, but if you don't have a pulse on where you want to be this time next year, you won't know whether you're close or far. And when this time next year happens and we're sitting somewhere, whether it's a sandwich shop or a grandiose palace meeting on Thursday nights, you won't be able to give me a straight answer about why you didn't really accomplish your objectives this year. Why? You had no pulse. Don't want to hear you lacked funding. Don't want to hear you lacked opportunity. Don't want to hear you didn't get a break. Don't want to hear about the economy. You didn't have a pulse. Pulses tell us how close or how far. When Jesus spoke to people and said, you have no idea who's walking amongst you, he would tell them, you have absolutely no idea the amount, the drastic, radical change that's about to hit the world in which you live in. Are you with me so far? Does that make sense? Didn't mean to scold any of you. Just trying to motivate you. What's a pulse? All right, let's look at your notes. What is a pulse? It's the accurate reading of where things are that is separate from how appearance portrays them. You know, I was putting these notes on paper so you could have them, because some of these things are what I've already said from last week. The story came to me. That's the whole thing with Elisha and his servant Gehazi. They're in a conflict, and Elisha says to Gehazi, you need to peek your head outside the tent and get a pulse on what's going on. Well, the pulse was terror. He comes back in the tent. You have no idea what we're in for, boss. We are about to be blown to smithereens. And he begins in 2 Kings 6 to describe everything that's against him. So Elisha says, okay, I'm going to change your pulse by changing your sight. He prays for him. He says, go peek your head back out again. And Gehazi's like, wow, whole different pulse. But initially, that's all Elisha was doing. He was saying, Gehazi, I need you to look out there and get a feel for what's going on. Do you know that there are entertainers? I know television preachers, and I won't even mention their names. They will not even come out of their back dressing rooms until there is a certain amount of the auditorium they're in filled. They have somebody. I know of one particular guy, won't say who he is, because how do you know this? I know. I used to hang in them circles. An hour and a half before the service even starts, when he's still at his hotel, he has a person that calls him every 15 minutes, giving him a pulse on who's there, what VIPs are there, how big the crowd is, what's the energy of the place, boom, 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 boom. Why? He doesn't want to walk through the curtain at the crescendo of the choir singing their music. He doesn't want to bust through the curtain and the whole third deck is empty. He doesn't. At least if he does that, he wants to know that the third deck's empty. Pulse. You say, you sound like you're describing control freaks. Trust me, I want to make you the most prosperous control freak of your success you have ever imagined. Say thank you and we can move on.
You said you started with the
What?
defining pulse.
It's right there. Turn your page over. Got it all right there. Pulse is something. What is a pulse? Second paragraph from the top. It's the accurate reading of where things are. The pulse of something is the true measure of what that thing is, even overriding appearance. What's the example I gave you last week? You walk in here, you see a person laying on the floor. They look motionless. They're unconscious. Do you assume that they're dead because they look that way? You walk over and what do? You take a pulse. You take a pulse. Why? Because the pulse can say they're alive even when the appearance says they're dead. Have you ever had something that looked like it was dead in the water, but you're the one who knew deep inside there was a pulse that said there is life here? And if you can grab the life, it doesn't matter what the appearance says. All right. Next levels of life success are predicated by a pulse of three distinct areas. What did we deal with last week? First of all, there's the pulse on the process of our goals. The process. You have to have a pulse on the process. Two elements of the process, timing and steps. The timing. Understanding the truth about the timing of certain pieces of the process as opposed to what your script said the process should be or the timing should be. You're understanding the timing. You said we should be able... Have you ever went on a trip and you set a time for departure, don't you? I'm not talking about... Like, say you're going to drive. I want to be out of the house by 6 in the morning. 6-hour drive to Disneyland from here. We'll be out by 6 in the morning. At least be on the main freeways so we beat the traffic. How many of you ever been out on time? Why? Because you realize trying to get that much going, even in the morning, no matter how much advanced prep you do, other things take place. You now learned what you can and cannot do realistically. Do you know one of the worst tragic things about being, quote unquote, especially a charismatic or spirit dependent, and this has nothing to do about the spirit, so don't misunderstand me here. But people that are charismatic in their theology are addicted to magic. Almost none of them I meet understand the process of how life is lived. Because why? Because the whole message is everything God's going to do for you right now. How many are ready? And everybody raises their hand. Ask the same crowd, how many are ready to learn for the next 12 years how to get to someplace great? 12 years, you mean 12 days. You mean 12 minutes, because I came here because I'm ready to receive. Receive, you're going to go home empty-handed. You're going to learn what the everybody in church wants to come to how many are God to retire your debt? Well, God didn't get you in debt. Why is it his job to retire it? What's the process of you getting financially free? Timing. God visits Abram. Genesis 15 says you're going to have a son, and not only are you going to have a son, the one you've been moaning and groaning that you don't have, you're going to father him at your old age, and your wife's going to bear him in her womb at her really, really, really old age. And what does he do? He gets done talking to God and expects for Isaac to be here. Isaac doesn't show up for decades later. Whole journey. They create Ishmael in the process. Why? I thought we were supposed to have a kid by now. You mean you showed up and talked to me? Do you know how many people I meet that get so dismayed at hearing a word from God, but they don't know how to balance the difference between a word from God and the process of how to walk it out? Like somehow if God speaks right now, by tomorrow morning it should be on our front door. I've had God tell me to get ready for certain things. I went ahead and packed my bag, expect your bag's ready. It's going to happen now. A year later, I'm still going, I really kind of missed you about that one, didn't I? It's like, I don't think I did. You said to get ready for this, get prepared for this, isn't it? How would God grow you if everything was magic? The whole character of your life is developed by what you learn the process is. See, there's the honeymoon of marriage and there's the process of marriage. How would you learn how to be a good relational person in the honeymoon? Too many sparks. Sparks are easy. You say, well, the honeymoon phase wears off. People say about marriage, you'll hear them say this, yeah, the honeymoon wears off and reality sets in. It's not reality, it's the process of now living married. That's why Hollywood couples divorce within the first 3 years, most of them. Why? They're addicted to, they're not in a relationship for the process. They're in a relationship for the euphoria. It's just how they're based. Steps. Oh, I put this clue in there about you, about the timing. The less we learn about life via the process of how things work, the more dependent we will live on magic to make it happen. Welcome to Magic Land Christian Center, where God wants to do so many magical things for your life. It's all going to be magic. I always thought, after I got a revelation of this, I thought maybe, a good name for a church would be the Magic Kingdom, but then I realized Disney would sue me. Let's talk about steps. Having your pulse on the process. You got to have a pulse on the timing. Something I didn't put in your notes, but you can write down. If you don't have a pulse on how the timing is working, you won't have a pulse on how to restructure certain things on a dime when you need to. You'll get disappointed and you'll be devastated, instead of disappointed and you step back and retweak. If you don't have a pulse on how the timing is working, you're not going to have a pulse on strategical restructuring. See what the time is. All right. Let's talk about steps. How do we work with the steps in the process? How the steps connect. When do we capitalize on the gifts? You know what a gift is in the process? It's a shortcut step. In other words, today a gift dropped in my lap, and if I embrace it, I don't have to go to C after B. I can go to L after B. I pole vaulted. I leapfrogged because I grabbed a gift. Somebody was capable of opening what's the normal process of Joseph getting out of prison? More years than he would have been alive. But a baker and a butler were the shortcut gifts to the Pharaoh's throne. Once Joseph could connect with the Pharaoh and read his dreams, interpret his dreams, he was second in command overnight. See, having your pulse on the steps is not just about how the steps connect, but how to embrace the shortcuts. I'm sitting doing a mediation for a divorcing couple, because that's what I do in my other day job. And everybody comes in with their lines in the sands and their heels in it. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the thing, I'm already prepared to negotiate this way, way, way out until the next millennium. Because all of a sudden, the husband stops and he offers up a gift. A gift that circumvents the entire power struggle. And thankfully, the woman realized it was a gift and she went with it. Boom, that thing was wrapped up. Arrangement done. He left. He moved on. What was the gift? He just cut some strings that he realized in the long term it's not going to be beneficial to fight just so you can say, I won. She agreed. She was not in the let me just rub your nose in it mode, so we all went home happy. Steps. How do you have your pulse on the steps? Let's ask a couple questions. Oh, by the way, what do the steps do? They accelerate the process, and that's what I put on your notes. You should underline it. The shortcut steps, they accelerate the process. There's just some things that you want to do this year that you don't want to be doing them somewhere in November. You need to be doing them somewhere around June. That'll be the result of a process step. All right, now let's take a sidebar. It's on your notes. I wrote sidebar on it. You can put the word sidebar. It says money and connections will be at the center of everything you do. Money and connections. Now I want to challenge you on some things about this. So what are you going to do to educate yourself about money and people skills? Money and people skills. Are you one of those people, and just be honest, you don't have to raise your hand or nod. I'm not going to, this is not a test. Matter of fact, you can just lie and tell me anything I need to hear. Are you one of those people who will educate yourself about what a job requires? But you will not educate yourself about what becoming money prosperous would require. Here's a clue. People only educate themselves based on what they see themselves achieving. Hey, let me ask you an honest question, and I don't want to offend anybody, but on those cards you all wrote down, those 5 things, every card has some financial objective written on there. What do you think? How do you think that's going to happen this year? You think it's magically going to fall out of the sky like manna? You think it's just magically going to take place? You have got to find the sources of paradigm shift, paradigm expansion about the very things you want to achieve. I want to be smarter with money. I want to be smart about it. How? You have to educate yourself. Do you know when I make a post on Facebook that's financially centric, I get so few likes? Do you know why? Because when I use words like wealth or words like financially independent, it goes over everybody's head. You know why it goes over everybody's head? It's tough for the average person to see themselves in the rat race and being what they have a photograph of wealthy. Wealthy just means you're free, and it means you've built something that has generational value. And so I say the word wealth, and the average person goes, I am never going to, I'm so buried in debt and buried in this and buried in that. I don't have this degree. I don't know this group of people. I didn't come from this background. I'm never, ever going to be that way. And so, you know what? They tune out the idea. So what does that tell you when you're tuning it out? Don't need to educate myself about any of this. All I need to do is actually upgrade my skills somehow so I can make an extra $2 an hour. Or if I can jump from one company to the next company will offer me a better base salary. You're still in the rat race. I'm amazed at how many people want financial independence in their lives but won't become financially educated. People that want to be CEOs of even what would be considered a small business, but it could be a thriving small business, who won't listen to how Mark Cuban sold an idea and that idea traded up about 10 times until he's a multi-billionaire. He owns sports teams. You won't sit and listen to how these guys did what they did. Get that mindset. Anybody can want to be more successful in an area, but it requires educating yourself. You know why somebody sticks out 6 years of law school and does the internship and passes the bar? They can see themselves practicing law. That's what gets them in the front door of the law school. Robert saw himself designing mega structures, going to architectural school, doing all the internship, all the work. You learn because of where you see yourself going. Because why? Because success isn't accidental. You know the only people that success is accidental for? Lottery winners.
Yeah,
That's the only people in the world that success is accidental for. You have the winning number. And what's tonight's Powerball? It's worth $3.5 billion. And 4 coal miners in West Virginia all have the winning ticket. They'll never have to coal mine again. You'll never learn where you don't see yourself going. Am I making sense to anyone?
yes.
All right. Get a pulse on the cost of your goals. What are the 3 distinct areas of education accomplishing your goals will require you to learn? And no, and back up, it's not, when I said about the people skills, that might have been, you might have not known how that applies to you. I'm coming out in the next 30 days with a whole CD that I'm going to record in my garage on 18 pages of notes on how to develop people relational skills. Not relationships, relational skills. Write this down. I cannot be a talented jackass. No people skills. You know how many preachers I've met over the years anointed on the platform? You can't have a 5-minute conversation with them. You just can't. And there are no people skills. Tyrants, idiots. They even smell a bridge somewhere, they'll burn it. Just with anybody. There's no people skills. What's the pulse on the cost of your goals? What are the 3 distinct areas of education accomplishing your goals will require you to learn? What are the 3 distinct areas of education accomplishing your goals will require you to learn? And then here's another question for you. How good is your pulse at identifying what's in your hand? God had to get that one across to Moses. But I only have a stick. Yeah, well, that's all you need. And I'm not trying to give you a nice faith-building motivational seminar here about what's in your hand, but I can guarantee you, you have enough right now in your hand to set anything you want starting this year in motion. Enough right now. It's either in your skill, your past experience, it's either in a connection you have to someone who can open a door, it's in something you can trade, sell, barter, bargain, beg. Just don't steal. Or at least if you do, don't tell me you did it. You have something. You know someone. Even the widow woman in Elijah's day in 1 Kings 17, she had accepted death. You can't get any more depressed in your worldview than that. But even she could accurately describe to the prophet of God what she had. I got enough meal to make one more cake. Elijah didn't multiply the cake. He multiplied her perspective of what she had. If you give that, it'll be the beginning of all it will ever be. You hold on to it, you'll die. She had enough. I know people that can't describe what they currently have. You need to have a pulse on the enemies to yourself. Not the enemies against you, the enemies you are to you. Where are you a quitter? Where are you lazy? Where are you not? Where can't you sustain motivation? Where is your follow-through really messed up? Where are you self-destructive only because you never push yourself past certain personal growth thresholds? Where do you allow moods to rule you? You're up and down all over the place. And no, you don't need medication. You need to grow the bleepity bleep up. Where do you need to be controlled? In other words, if I drag your behind to the gym, you'll exercise. If I force you to do X, Y, and Z, you'll do it. It's like the pastors that are all over the Silicon Valley tonight encouraging people. You know what? Some people just, what they need to come to the house of God, they need you to pick them up and bring them. Well, yeah, if they don't have any ride. But if I got to bring you to church, what am I going to do? It's like, I remember T.D. Jakes told me one time, he said, if I got to beg you to come, I got to beg you to stay. I never forgot that. All right. Why is pulse so important? And then we're going to get the last 5 minutes in of part 2 here, because you only need about 5 minutes for part 2. Why is pulse so important? Because on days when you don't have answers,
Turn around, turn the paper out.
on days when you don't have answers, you have agenda. An agenda is what we move by even when we don't have all the answers. I have an agenda for cause. People ask me all the time, well, what do you think? Where do you think we're going to find a space to meet? I mean, how long are we going to be able to meet here? How are we going to do this? We were out on the patio. Betty goes, "Oh, where do you think we're going to go?" I don't know. I'm working on it, but I don't know. But I got an agenda.
Sure.
I don't wake up every morning wondering if I have all the answers. I got an agenda. I'm a driven, relentless individual. Why? Of my agenda. I'm on an agenda to feed hungry people and to help restore and stabilize the disenfranchised and not try to convert them all and get them into my faith and my religion and my worldview. I'm just trying to rehabilitate people who don't really have the worldview and the skills to get above the rat race they live in. I've got an agenda. All right. That's why Pulse is so important. Let's fill in some blanks. Movement. First blank line. Movement is an issue of the types of things at our fingertips. Movement. How organized are your systems? Where can you find the most important things to you? I know not all crowded on the kitchen counter. How movement is a direct result of the kinds of things at your fingertips. These little pieces of paper I showed you, it's info at my fingertips. Things I have either stored, info at my fingertips. Information is not just king, it is the king of decision making. Everybody I've ever hired, most of them I've ever hired, I've always told them, I said, if I have to ask you questions about what's going on with my work that you should have already been asking the task itself, then you'll pay me. I won't pay you. Movement is an issue of the kinds of information. I don't do well with people who every other sentence it's always, I don't know, I'll find out, I'll get back to you. I really don't know. I don't know. You know what? I got to go find it. It's somewhere. I got movement. The most important things in your world have to be right at your fingertips. If you're not accessible, Mike Murdoch told me his hiring philosophy was, he says if information's not accessible, it's unusable. Fill in the next blank. Progress.
Sure.
Progress has to be visible. Visible in order to be usable. It has to be visible. Write the vision. Make it plain. Progress.
Sense. It's invisible in order to be
Usable. Another word would be multiplied. Progress has to be visible in order to be multiplied. The next line. Pulse is an element of understanding. Proximity. Pulse is an element of understanding proximity. Here's what I mean by that. The access of the most important pieces of information directly related to your most uninhibited movement. If you don't know your proximity to your agenda, how would you know if you were close or far away? How would you know? You don't know where the proximity is. What do you think the first question should be if you're expecting someone and they're running late and they send you a text? On my way. What's the first question? What's on your way mean? On your way from Utah? On your way from Sunnyvale? On your way from where? The most powerful people that have the chance of succeeding the greatest you'll ever surround will say, running late, should be there in 5, should be there in 10, should be there. I'm here, should be. They're speaking in proximity language. The most powerful people that you want to learn from, that I want to learn from, rule their world by ruling their proximity of everything. I had somebody, I offered somebody, you'll think this is funny, and I got to wrap this up because they're going to close. I had somebody, one of the only ways we were able to pay for some of the transition out here, I sold some of our furniture when we lived in Minneapolis. I sold some of our furniture to a person who if you would have looked at her, you would have never, ever guessed in a million years she could have afforded the kind of furniture we had. One-of-a-kind antiques, one-of-a-kind, pieces, some pieces from Asia, Tibet, things we didn't really need to bring out here, and we didn't know where we were going to be, if the house we were going to be getting into was going to have the space. She fell in love with them. She'd come to my house every week because we'd do the cause meetings in my house there. She fell in love with it, and they were red. Some of them were red, great antique Asian red, and they were just, red's my favorite. Pastor Konrad, how much, if you were to sell that, how much? And I'd look at her and don't even ask that question. Even if I were to make you a deal, it wouldn't be good. She showed up in my house with 62 $100 bills one day. And she didn't even know she had 62 of them. And that was exactly what I wanted to sell, some of these pieces combined. She didn't even, where she got them? She stored her Mother's Day cards from her kids, Christmas cards from her kids, birthday cards, who would all stick a $100 bill in them. She stored them since 1998. And they were in a big box with the $100 bills still in them. So she said, when I realized I could buy that, she goes, I wanted to see just how much I had. I took out all the cards and dumped out. And and she's so whimsical. She's like, I got $6,200. And I'm standing with my mouth on the ground. I'm like, she had no proximity of where she was. Do you realize, without buying this furniture, what she could have done even greater with that 60 had she known? Had no idea. She would live some days in the worst neighborhoods of Minneapolis because that's all she could afford. She would eat some days she would help out at soup kitchens in Minneapolis just so she could eat there. And here she's got $100 bills, more than you and I have seen at any one time in the last several weeks or days or months. She's got them sitting in a box in her house and doesn't even know it. She knew that there was money in the cards. She just... Proximity. You're going to pay off a credit card bill. I wake up I don't care if the figures don't change for 30 straight days. You put something visible in front of you. You make an extra payment every month on it rather than just the minimum. And now you'll see those numbers change. Now you've got proximity. Here's the last most important thing. Your objectives. Fill in that line. Your objectives are where your energy is. Your objectives are where your energy is. Fail at meeting your objectives and you lose energy. Creative energy loss feels like depression. It's so important you get that. Creative energy loss feels like depression. Your objectives. I put down you're going to pay a couple of your credit cards an extra payment this much. I'd put down that you're going to pay X amount towards something. I have Lourdes and I do our budgets every 2 weeks for pay period. You say, well, you pay a lot of the same bills. What's there to look at? We know a couple months out in advance what we're going to be able to do with any extra money that comes in personally. Boom, 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 from this, from that, and the other. I know. I find a dime on the floor in here on my way out, I can tell you where that dime's going to go. You say, well, hey, you're just one of those people. It's not about personality, and it's not about how someone's wired. It's a decision to know that the only hope I have some days is the energy of how I have my pulse on my most important goals. I got it on. I can't just write a list and go, this is what I'd like to see happen in 2013. 2013 is going to cost you. And here's
where your
energy is. Fail at meeting your objectives. Man, I had a couple months ago, and we failed at meeting some of our even basic objectives. Some of the extra. I was like hostile mad, cuss mad, break things mad. Why? Because that's the only energy I have. You ever had faith some days when you don't have resources? At least you know, faith is what keeps you out of committing suicide. Why? Because you have hope. You realize, you know what? I'm on the right track. Did this make sense to any of you tonight? You got it? We'll go a little bit further next week about pulse. Having your pulse. Get your information, Moses. Some of you got mini computers in your smartphone. Streamline your information so it's ready. Know who you are and where you are at any given time over the most important things. Your pulse. It's going to create energy for you, movement for you. Monitor your progress. I'm not making much, so monitor it. It's better than what you have. Good night, everyone. Lord, I speak blessing. I speak blessing over every person. I speak a clarity, an awareness, a pulse of what the process is, what the progress is, and what the proximity is. And this will be a year of fantastic achievement. I decree it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Okay.